You're now rocking with the best.
Welcome.
Please welcome all of you
to StartCast.
So our next panel talk is going to be with Agnes Posa from Allpress UK, German manager. She joined us last night. She came to Berlin extra for today's event. Thank you for coming, Agnes. As well as Mr. Kelly. Paul Kelly is Managing Director, La Marzocco Europe, Africa and India. And Mr. Ainscough, I think many of you know that guy, Aaron. Aaron will be joining us as well for that panel. The panel will be about the topic of specialty coffee in UK and the journey of specialty coffee, because we personally at La Marzocco Germany learn a lot from what's happening in La Marzocco UK and how they made this beautiful market it's a standard to go anywhere and get perfect coffee, perfect flat white. People know what's good quality, and that's why we thought maybe this panel could be inspiring for you, and we can all learn something from it. But before we go, as mentioned, the names are not many, so the chances are high. I'm gonna pick up a name, and as mentioned, the winner will come with us to academia. Now we all know what academia is. Okay. Ken tried to PayPal me earlier. My PayPal is not working. Okay, we got a name. And it's Copiton. Oh, here we go. Well, it's real. So you can choose a +1, and we'll go together to academia. Perfect. Yes, I would like to ask Agnes, Paul, and Aaron to please join us on the stage. Now we can finally use the tweet.
Hi guys, how's it going? Good day so far? Yes, it's fantastic seeing you here. Some old faces, some new faces, some fresh faces, some not so fresh faces. I think Raz summed it up, the reason why we do this, or why we want to do this. We want to provide the tools for us, and by us I mean not just us, but us all, because we need to learn how to shape this industry, or the specialty coffee industry, together. Because without brave entrepreneurs and dreamers and people with passion, a specialty coffee industry doesn't spring out of the earth by itself. So we need to help shape it. And on that note, we thought looking to the UK, as Raz also mentioned, is an inspiration for us. I mean, has everybody been to the London Coffee Festival? Or who's been to the London Coffee Festival here in the room? Quite a few. Those who haven't, it's worth a trip. It's insane how much passion and how much energy over one weekend Paul Kelly can manage. It is a fantastic event, and I think we were allowed to take some roasters with us occasionally, and we always come back. I mean, the whole team and whoever we take with us this year, Azul was with us at the True Artisan Cafe, and we come back exhausted, but super inspired, really, really inspired. So yeah, I mean, that's definitely something for anybody who hasn't been there, to definitely take a look and kind of aim for that next year. Speaking of not shaping itself, so as we say, we look across the ditch to the UK. Some would unkindly call it the Insel der Verdammten, but we don't. And we thought, who better to talk to about the specialty coffee industry than those who have done it before us. I mean, I think we're still niche in Germany. I think we all know in this room that 99% of the coffee consumers get their coffees from the local bakery, a push button, regardless of what it is. It's not a Genussmittel, it's a Aufputschmittel. So let's find out the journey that these guys have been on. Hopefully I'm able to extract some, they're gonna make it hard on me, but hopefully I can extract some gems from these two gems. So I will let Agnes introduce herself. Thank you again for coming across. Really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be here with you all today. So I run a coffee company in the UK called Allpress. and it's a company that's been in the UK since 2010, so like on the sort of beginning side of the specialty coffee movement. But it was established in New Zealand in 1989, so it's been around for a long time. Before that, my personal coffee journey started washing dishes in the cafe and looking up to the barista in awe. Then I started working for Allpress, and I was a barista trainer, so I travelled around New Zealand to these tiny little towns that had one cafe that was the heart of the community, and fell in love with it more. And then arrived in the UK in 2010 and started working on building Allpress from the ground up in a completely new market where there was probably 4 or 5 great cafes and shitloads of chains everywhere. So Starbucks, Costa, Cafe Nero were really, that was sort of where you could get your coffee. Spent a couple of years living in Tokyo, running Allpress there, and I have my own cafe, a little place called Potter and Reed in London, and a little natural wine bar as well. So I'm all in hospitality.
All in hospitality.
It's my jam.
I have nothing to promote. Yeah. I have a book coming out. I'm Paul Kelly. Raz gave my title. I sold my first linear classic 2003. So I've been through the UK market through its challenges and celebrations. I've worked with Agnes since 2010. I remember you coming to the UK. But just have to say one thing. This isn't just about us talking about how great the UK is. We've both sat here today and we've got so much out of this event. So I think one thing is to give a round of applause to La Marzocco Germany, because they deserve it, because putting every roaster in the room is kind of a challenge. I don't know whether I'd do it in the UK unless we had boxing gloves and a referee. But so I think it's brilliant, and it's fair play to all of you to be open-minded enough to come and share, because I think we're going to do a talk about growing markets. I think that's the key to all of this, is being open-minded enough to sit next to each other, because you're all really on the same journey, maybe at different points or different places, but you need to be brave enough to sit in a room. So I want to give all of you and all of La Marzocco Germany a round of applause, if we could.
So let's cast your minds back 10 years ago. How was the beginning? How was specialty coffee perceived, accepted in a predominantly tea-drinking nation? Those first cafes, those first machine sales, growth of the roasters. I mean, there's so much to go into. Let's start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning.
In the beginning.
In the beginning. So really, you know, and it's a terrible thing to say, but crisis in an economy changes people's attitude, right? So I think you go back to 2008, 2007. So I worked in coffee before then. It was a process. It wasn't an experience. It was a fuel. And I think the reason England went first in terms of embracing a cafe culture is because we didn't have one, because we were a tea country. So that's why it's different, right? We're a tea company. I've got something to plug. Yeah, that's it.
Right after the show.
Yeah. So I think that's the difference. So 2008-07, there was the crash, and everyone had the same £5 note in their pocket. But what they did was they decided to walk past the chain and go into an independent because they wanted to support the underdog or the artisan. So I think that changed out of not necessity, but pride in spending their money, because there wasn't a lot of money. So you saw people walking past a chain to go to an independent. And at that same time, I think, and I'm going to pay homage to that side of the world, I think Australia and New Zealand were seeing that the coffee culture was growing, and they helped companies come across to Europe and to the UK as an investment to find a home, to share their coffee story. So I think everything combined with very cheap rents, a new palate, and a person trying to explore a new culture, plus Kiwis and Aussies coming over and seizing that moment, was how that really started, but really small. But that was 2008, 2009, 2010. But it was great to see because it was so new. And it also reminds me a little bit of now, in terms of you go to European countries, and I know I'm talking a lot and I'll do this very quickly, but the thing is, watching Europe at this point coming out of a pandemic, and the pandemic was terrible, and personally people suffered, people lost their lives, but if you look at how things have changed and people embracing new cultures or being brave enough to challenge themselves to try something new, you see that across Europe. So, but that's how it started for my journey in the UK.
Yeah, I guess that's like a summary of where the market was at that point. As far as Allpress goes, we arrived in 2010. We had a little second-hand Petroncini roaster. That was a 30-kilo roaster, I think, that we installed on Redchurch Street in Shoreditch, in a community that was predominantly artists and people making things. There was a gun maker next door to us. There were people making jewellery on the other side. And we opened the doors of that cafe and nobody came. But within 6 months, we were pumping out like 1,000 coffees a day, and it became a hub for the community in that area. It was really amazing to see that shift. And I think the thing that sets, you know, the independent cafe apart from the chains is that counterculture of, you know, that friendly service, that personable service, and creating a space where people feel that they have some ownership of it as well. But yeah, there was maybe 4 or 5 specialty cafes in London at that time, and there were more roasters, I think, than cafes. There was Caravan Coffee Roasters, Monmouth, of course, Clemson and Sons, and who else? Square Mile, yeah. And yeah, I think that they also had their own cafes, and they sort of set this this movement in place.
I mean, it was an interesting time, 2008, 2009. So you talk about the same £5 in your pocket, but then there's also price sensitivity, trying to convince a consumer or to try and sell to somebody who's not necessarily, I guess in the UK, there's a lot of expats there, maybe driven by, you know, New Zealand, Australia, who are looking at a little piece of Kiwiana or something that reminds them of home. But then you've got the local tradies that then you've got to convince, okay, this is worth it. And I think maybe this feel of neighbourhood cafe acceptance, I mean, how was that accepted as far as pricing goes? Was there some pushback or some flat white for how many quid?
Well, I think the interesting thing there is that it's more expensive to buy a coffee at Starbucks or Costa than it is to buy in a specialty cafe. So
even back then?
I think so, yeah. You know, they're premium brands, and from what I remember, it was similar. But I think ultimately it's about, you know, people want something that's better. The first time that they taste it, they can't go back. And so it's converting people one at a time, and then also the experience. Yeah. So the experience is obviously a huge part of that. Yeah. That sense of community and ritual around coffee.
Well, I think that was the changer as well. We're in a room of coffee roasters, but it wasn't just about the coffee back then. I think we elevated the palate, but also it was that eye-to-eye contact. It was remembering someone's name. It was looking them, you know, and knowing them every day and saying hello, and that changed. That was a different kind of hospitality that I think the Kiwis and the Aussies also brought over, which was kind of relaxed. But I remember back when people won competitions, and there was an attitude of coffee where you talked at people about why you're having a cappuccino at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, get out of my shop. And then it changed to talking to people, right? And I think you simplify that conversation and you take people on a journey. And I think that's the beautiful thing, is education should be enjoyable, right? You know, anyone who's tried to learn something and didn't like it, hands up how many people stopped learning it. So if you're there and there's an interaction and it's enjoyable, you take people on a journey, and that's how you grow a market. That's how you grow an industry or a community.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that takes us to that culture, the culture that you have in the cafe. How do you instill your culture into your baristas to be able to communicate that? Because you've got 100 customers, 150, best case 1,000 customers coming through the door, and you want to give them that moment in their day where they feel relieved or charged, or they want to share their issues. I think through COVID, it was really kind of a missing piece of people's life, that ritual that you talk about. How do you maintain that culture, or how do you build it first? How do you communicate your ideas and your culture down to your barista that gets carried through to the end customer?
I think one really important thing is explaining to people, or showing people that it makes their job so much more fulfilling and rewarding when they're interacting with customers instead of serving them. And I think that's something that you can show people through example, and I think once people experience that fulfillment from interacting with someone, it's pretty hard to stop it. But also, we have a really strong set of values at Allpress as well that we instill in people around what we do for our customers, and we wouldn't exist without them, so they are the most important people to us, whether that's a cafe that uses our coffee or whether it's a customer in one of our cafes.
And Paul, I mean, you're responsible for a large piece of the planet as far as La Marzocco goes. So, I mean, how do you ensure or help assist, let's say, maintain La Marzocco culture from one branch office to the other, and also transmit that to our values to roasters?
It's a funny question, because I remember Piero coming to the London Coffee Festival. Ludwig's there. Ludwig started the London Coffee Festival 2011. Yes? 12? No, 11, wasn't it? Okay, we'll debate after. And I remember Piero coming and being in awe of what was going on, but also people coming up to Piero and asking for them to take his photo or take the photo with him, and he was blown away. And there was a big discussion back at the factory, and it was really simple, because when I started working for La Marzocco, there was 80 employees. So now there's 800, but we still try and make it like there's 80 employees. Everyone has a voice. Everyone is part of that family. And we're not like a family, we are a family. And when you say that, it's because every family has good and bad moments, right? And so we go through that challenges and conversations, and sometimes crucial conversations, but we all come out of it, in a good space. And I think that's the blessing of working for La Marzocco, is everywhere you went, it was very relaxed. We're not the most corporate company in the world, so it's kind of relaxed. Those values about enjoyment, and being there for adventurers. One of the things that grew the market in the UK wasn't really La Marzocco opening an office. It wasn't really the palette and the £5 note. It was bravery from the likes of Agnes and other people opening coffee shops and opening roasteries. And I think one of the things that Allpress did really well is they opened a roastery and a coffee shop, because I think if you want to grow a market and you want to control that interaction, being owner-operators is what we say in the UK, but being a roaster, you're talking to people, you're educating people, you're also really consulting with them on their projects to see how they open a coffee shop, because they're in your coffee shop. So I think doing pop-ups, doing events, always showcasing your product, but doing it in a way which is interactive, builds a culture. That's what we did at La Marzocco. I think that's what Allpress did. And I think if you want to reference back to the German market, you need to be brave enough to go out there and get people to taste your coffee, get people to see how your cafe is, get people to see what your brand message is, what your DNA is, and then they'll follow you. And that's how you give people your values and your culture, is bringing them in. Inclusivity. No one wants, everyone talks about that exclusive club, but that doesn't grow a community. Especially now when people care about inclusivity, I think is a really important thing, and you're blessed because you're at that point where you can make those decisions and you can do it you know, in an energised way. And that's why we love coming and seeing what's going on in other markets around Europe, because they're exciting.
Yeah, I mean, you took my next topic, which was how important are events? How important is it to get out there? There's there's a few events around Germany that a lot of roasters can get to. Sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's zeitlich not possible, sometimes it's financially not possible. But yeah, it's interesting to hear that that's a big part of transmitting your culture out into the world. Just get out there. I guess there's probably a lot of roasters in here interested in scaling. How do let's say I have my roastery, I have my coffee shop, I've got it. This is my flagship, I'm getting comfortable, I'm getting on a few wholesale customers. What's the next step? When is the next step? Maybe I'm looking from Berlin into Hamburg, maybe I've got a bunch of customers in Stuttgart. You know, when do I make the move? How do I make the move? Do I set up another roastery? How does that work? So maybe, Paul, you've seen a lot of roasters jump from one city to the next with some good results, some bad results. Allpress has obviously done it, hopped across the planet from New Zealand to Australia to Japan to the UK, and now a hub in Manchester outside of Dalston. Well, not outside of Dalston, but another location. When, how, and how do we do it?
I remember picking leads for our other office, and we call them local office. And I remember, who will remain nameless, in the management of La Marzocco, and I took him there, and it's a northern city where Joel's from, so before he throws anything at me, and it Leeds. And I remember this person saying to me, "Why would you open an office here? There are no La Marzoccos." And I was like, exactly. You don't open an office where you've been. And it's, again, you know, you want to go to an area and drive that area and build that area, because that's what's needed to grow that culture from a small point and grow it slowly. There's more depth to that relationship, there's more loyalty, and there's more impact. And it does sometimes go wrong, but that's, again, coming back to that bravery of doing it, and you know, and doing it in a small way, but starting and growing and being committed to that growth. Some days you'll have good days, some days you'll have bad days, but it does have an end, because people will come. And people will change their mentality because you're there. People don't change their mentality if you're not there. If you are there, you give them a chance to change, right?
I mean, Agnes, we had a conversation outside about the UK, and there was a moment where Allpress was thinking about coming into Europe, and we just had a conversation outside about this huge untapped potential still in a place like the UK, where we go across and we think, why, is a La Marzocco on every street corner? There's 1,000 roasters per square mile. I mean, is there any more space? But you know, the conversation we had is super interesting also for people who have a roastery in Kiel or Lübeck, or there's still potential in these little towns before you decide to make the jump from Lübeck to Hamburg, let's say, or so yeah, it was an interesting conversation for me.
Yeah, I think one thing that is probably something we've only been doing at Allpress for the last 3 or 4 years, and that's, if you want to grow, you actually have to go out and find the growth. It's not going to come to you unless you're one of the very lucky few brands that just everyone wants. And I think, you know, in order to do that, you need to have a strategy of where you want to grow and how you're going to support that growth. So having an offering that's scalable. So if you're a coffee roaster, you obviously roast coffee, you need to be able to get your coffee to your customers, but you also need to be able to provide those layers of support for machinery, training, all of those things. So that's something that we think about a lot at Allpress in terms of scaling, making sure that our offering doesn't go in too many different directions. We don't say yes to everything that every cafe asks us to do. We don't make custom blends, that kind of thing, because we do have ambitions to grow. I think a really good sales team, that can go out and look for those opportunities. And it doesn't mean stealing a cafe off another coffee roaster. It means looking at the areas of the market where there are people who want to level up their coffee game, and there's so many in the UK anyway. larger businesses, large catering organisations, stadiums, things like that, where people want to add value to their offering and use specialty coffee. So looking for those opportunities and going out and targeting them, I think is huge.
Can I add to that? Because you touched on that roasters stealing from roasters in the room. I think what was...
Well.
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, she doesn't. What's really interesting, and you have this conversation a lot with roasters, is what's your strategy? I'm going to build my business by 25%. How are you going to do that? I'm going to go and steal 25% of their business. Oh, okay. I haven't heard that before. But in reality, you have 25% of growth in your business already. All you have to do is go back and look at it and say, am I giving those original customers that I had the training that I've started to give to everyone else, but maybe I haven't gone back and trained. Maybe I haven't gone back and spoken to them and done a cupping in their coffee shop or told them about our new sourcing or our transparency. And when you go back and you do that, that elevates them into the performing again because they're passionate again. So I think building a culture and scaling a business is always about redefining the message and reconnecting with your past partners and giving them, just some energy. And I think that's important. So you don't necessarily have to go out and steal off each other, because there is a saying, how they come to you is how they'll leave you. And if you steal someone, then they wanted to be stolen. If they wanted to be stolen once, then they're going to want to be stolen again. So it's more like a movement. So be very wary of stealing from each other.
Look, I think there's a few things there. I think the package that you talked about, the education, the training, the service, the machine program, the personal touch, which goes to Paul's point of just always staying in touch. I remember, full disclosure, I worked at Allpress for a month, so I kind of know the inner workings to a certain degree. I don't know if you still do this, maybe you don't, but they used to, one of the guys, so they deliver the beans themselves to London, in the central London area, and one of the guys would go from the packing or from the roastery and go and deliver it, and have that touch point. You're not sending it through UPS, or it was actually one of the guys would go there and then come back and write a report. So I think that those little touches, those little human interactions, to stay in touch, and it gets harder and harder as you get bigger and bigger to keep in touch with those people, but it's a really important. I found it a really important point to keep that customer loyalty.
Yeah. It's we have 500 partners that we work with in the UK. So we have a commitment to those partners that we will provide technical support, training, business advice. A 360-degree support model is our commitment. So we have in-house technicians, we have in-house trainers, we deliver the coffee, but we're also there to talk to them about their businesses and scaling their businesses as well. So a lot of our growth at Allpress comes from existing customers opening new sites, and we can provide the advice that they need to do that successfully. So it's a big commitment, but it pays off. It means that they're less likely to be pinched by another coffee roaster. It means that they're more likely to grow and be successful. And I think that underpins it. Their success is our success. That's sort of the bottom line of our approach. We don't want their machine to go down and not be making coffee for 2 hours in the peak time of the day. And we want them to be making really beautiful coffee so that people taste Allpress coffee and they think it's good. So all of these things tie into that.
I think it comes back to that point as well. If someone's opening a coffee shop, they're brave enough to open a coffee shop. So you need to visit them. You need to be with them. You need to show that you're there. You need to stand next to them and say, if you're going on this journey and we're your partner, then we're your partner. And you're consistently there. And I think that's a really important approach, is to be next to people. And I think you can never dismiss that, because it's key to growing a business and to growing a community and to growing a partnership, is to be impactful, even if it's just by standing next to someone.
I mean, I don't think we can talk about scaling a business and all of those points that you touched on without talking about staff. I think it's an issue worldwide at the moment. How do you get them? How do you keep them? That's it. We all want to know. How do you get them? How do you keep them?
You know, one of the things is, and I know we spoke about it in London, and someone said it to me, and it really stuck with me, is, you know, you can teach people, no disrespect to anyone, but you can teach people to make coffee. You can't teach people to be nice. So, you know, hire nice people. Golden rule number one is because that's really important to make sure you've got the right people in the business. Because if you and we all have to and want to interact with staff, then make sure it's enjoyable for both parties in the interaction, and that's how you have good staff. But also, you know, if someone's going to leave, then let them go. It's better for them to go with a full heart and a big smile than be staying with you and not being happy. And that's good for the industry. Yes, it's tough, but it also makes you think about other opportunities. Agnes will talk to you about well-grounded and opportunities of going outside of this industry and having a social impact with maybe bringing people into the industry that have never thought about hospitality. They may, you know, come from a different environment. They may come from a different, you know, part of the world. They may come from a different place in their life, but giving them an opportunity to come into coffee, I think is key. And I think coffee is a great industry for sustainability. I know we're talking later on about sustainability with minor figures. It's a great industry for, you know, innovation. And it's a great industry for people because it has a huge impact through mental health, through, you know, responsibility. And I think it's great to look at staffing and not looking at it as a problem, but look at it as an opportunity to see how you can work in different ways to bring people into the industry.
Don't hire freelancers, no.
Not even for the tax breaks.
Yeah, it's so hard, and I'm sure it's a challenge that everyone in this room is facing or has faced at some point. There's, you know, you can create a great place to work. That's a starting point. I think in terms of pay and career progression, obviously these are big topics, and I think as an industry we need to think about coming together and talking about the price of a cup of coffee and how that limits what we can actually pay people who work in a cafe. That's, you know, that's not an answer or a solution, but I think it's such a big consideration, and being brave with that as an industry and seeing what happens, because I don't think people are going to give up their cup of coffee if the price increases. Yeah, I think opportunities for progression is obviously super important, and, you know, if you're a coffee roaster, there's lots of different roles within the business that people can move into, but you can't hold on to people forever either, as Paul said. So you can give them a great experience while they're there and let them go on to something else. But there's also other channels for recruitment, like Paul mentioned Well-Grounded, which is an organisation in the UK that works with refugees and teaches them how to make coffee and about hospitality. And we work with that organisation as well as a couple of others. There's some fantastic initiatives with ex-offenders, and some of the people from those programs are our longest serving members of staff, and they're just amazing. So there's options.
Yeah, well, it's super interesting, this well-grounded we were discussing yesterday. Yeah. I think there's going to be a bunch of question time. I think there's going to be a few people who want to grill these two. So I'll bring it down to 3 quick-fire questions. Agnes, what's your favourite German roaster? No, just biggest challenge over the last 10 years? That's a huge question, I know.
I would say staff. I mean, like, from a business perspective, that is the thing that is not going away. We kept making excuses, being like, it's the pandemic, it's the recession, it's this, it's that, but it's not going anywhere. And I think that's been the sort of most difficult thing for me.
Yeah, okay. Biggest surprise over the last 10 years?
I think the resilience of, like, the coffee market continues to blow me away. The fact that, you know, we go through a pandemic, recession, and people still drink coffee, they still find that extra money to drink coffee, and I guess that just speaks to the fact that coffee is such an important social ritual for people. It brings joy to people, and yeah, I think that gives me a little bit of joy and satisfaction in what I do.
Okay. Most defining moment for you and or maybe you personally?
The time that I spent living and working in Japan, I was running a coffee company in a country where I didn't speak the language, was one of the hardest and most defining moments of my life. But yeah, super fun.
Oh. And the last, if you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice to yourself 10 years ago, what would that be?
Look at what other people are doing and take inspiration from it, but don't jump on the bandwagon of every trend that comes by. We won't be serving bubble tea anytime soon at Allpress. Just leave that to the chains.
The sage advice, thank you very much. So Mr. Paul Kelly, you want me to run through the questions again?
Go on. Go on. I think most defining moment, and I'm being very sincere here, is seeing the UK public and consumer embrace the farmer and understand the fragility of that where that coffee comes from. And I think listening to everyone talk today, that's a massive mindset for everyone, because the industry is fragile, and I think we have to take that cup cost up, not just to make money for the cafe and money for the roaster. It's the only way we're going to keep this industry alive and sustainable is putting money back in those farms. So a defining moment was it being at an event and watching how many people walked away from the event when there were farmers there with real understanding and how involved they are with keeping the industry alive. Right? We can all do these talks. We can all say, yeah, you should open cafes, do everything else. But without coffee, there's no point. And without the consumer understanding it, there's no point. So I think a defining moment was seeing the UK actually start to get it.
Okay. I mean, I guess that would almost tie it into the biggest surprise, huh? I mean, it's almost the same answer, because at the same time it's a defining moment, it's also a surprise that the consumer is open to that finally, kind of opening their eyes to where it's actually coming from. I'll answer that question for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Should we go?
Okay, I'm interested to hear your answer to this question, Mr. Kelly. If you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice.
I said yesterday, drink more water, but don't worry about it. You know, again, don't overthink it. Yes, have strategy, but strategy changes because the day changes. So don't overthink it. Don't overcomplicate it, and always believe in yourself, because yes, as Agnes was saying, you'll have customers come in, and everyone that says that a customer is always right, they're right in their world, okay? They may have an opinion, they may have a point of view, but also you can't change every day. Or someone will come in and they don't like that, I'll take it off the menu. Someone comes in the next day, I like that, so I'll put it back on the menu. You'll drive yourself crazy. It's keep the focus on what you truly believe in and your ethics and your DNA and your roadmap, and follow that, and don't overthink it. And I think, yeah, don't overthink it.
Fantastic, thank you. So, question and answer time. Who has some questions for these lovely people up here? Anybody other than Joel? No, Joel, go on there, mate.
I have a question for you, Agnes. With all you know now and all the experience, what would you do if you were to open a roastery tomorrow? Like, how would you attack that?
I wouldn't do that.
Wrong crowd.
Read the room, yeah?
That's such a hard question. I'd start small. I guess similar to Allpress, and not, with a crazy expansion plan, because I think that organic growth is really important to being authentic and scaling in a way that's sustainable. Yeah.
It's a big question, I get it.
Yeah.
I mean,
We can talk about that later.
wait.
Anybody else? Raz Mataz, what do you got?
Question for Agnes. So Paul pointed on a topic of you opening a cafe addition to your roastery. And the question is, how, in your perspective, how is this actually affecting your B2B sales? Not focusing on like the end customer who's buying one cappuccino, but is it actually affecting the wholesale customers?
Yeah, it's essential, and it's it's always been part of our growth strategy in all of the markets. So New Zealand, Australia, UK, Japan. The cafe comes attached to the roastery because it's how people get to know you as a coffee and know your flavour, but also know who you are and what you represent as a brand. So when we opened Manchester, that is a hub to support the customers that we have in that market already, but we have a cafe attached to that to grow awareness of the brand and also to talk, to be able to share our expertise in hospitality with our customers and show that we understand and we have empathy with what they're facing as well. But yeah, it's 100% essential. I don't know how some coffee roasters do it without a cafe. I honestly, I'm so impressed by that. I don't know how that happens.
Philip, where are you? Philip, you must have a there he is in the back. Mr. Reichert. I've been waiting.
I was wondering, you named a lot of wonderful like soft skills elements that also this industry actually are defining, right? Speaking of how we interact with people, the social skills and also the hospitality aspect of it all. I think something that I always, when going to the UK, obviously always being in love with London and the UK in general because of hospitality, because of coffee, also Australia obviously, and I'm coming back then to Germany, I'm always like, damn, it works so well over there. Coming in so, and that's my question to the two of you. What about the financial aspects? How do you give incentives? How do you make it happen for cafes and or also smaller businesses? Because the reality also is that the UK, especially also London, is so much more financially driven than it is in Germany and Berlin. We literally just don't have the capital, and also basically businesses in general are not so much willing to invest. So we have a culture of people being risk averse, speaking of getting investment in, obviously from abroad, but also even from within. So how do you as a roastery support small cafes and helping them financially, and or also La Marzocco? I mean, obviously there are ways, and one of them we'll hear tonight as well. But yeah.
Just firstly, I'm going to let you all into a little secret. I don't know whether you know it yet, but Brexit didn't work, and I didn't vote for Brexit, but just so you know, England isn't the booming economy you think, and I don't mean it disrespectfully, Philip, it's very different, and it's been different for a long time, but I think, again, it's bravery, it's a little bit of madness, it's a little bit of stubbornness to open a cafe, but what you're seeing, I think in England, and maybe if you ask that question, is a tough negotiation on rent. So a new coffee shop will go in and demand a minimum of 6 months rent-free, okay? They'll try and keep those build costs down as much as they can. I mean, you know what I find amazing is you'll sit in front of someone, we discussed this last night as well, you'll sit in front of someone, they'll show you a mood board. They have looked at this wallpaper for months. They have picked the furniture for years, but they decide what roaster they're going to use and what coffee machine maybe 2 or 3 months before they open.
All weeks.
All weeks, all right? And that's kind of madness because it's the engine of your business. But now you see a lot more educated, researched mindsets to open in the cafe, and it may be small, it may be just a window, it may be a van or whatever it is, but they're more focused on the coffee, and they do it with a conscience, which is different. But the opportunity is there to do it if you're brave enough to do it. And I think I see it. I travel a lot. You see it in India. You see it in France. You see it in many countries. I was in Sri Lanka. It was amazing to see people open these cafes, and they do it very small, and they start small, but they grow. And I think it's that first step to opening a cafe is the tough thing to do, because I don't know, I haven't opened a cafe, so I could be sitting here and you going, what does that guy know? Why is he telling us to do it? Because he hasn't done it, and that's a fair point. But I've seen so many people make that leap and do it, and just it's mind-blowing the success that they've had. So it's something you do have to judge, but I think coffee now is becoming fashionable in retail. So in London, new spaces. So if you're building a tower block for business or a tower block for apartments, the first thing that builder will do is ask if you can put a cafe downstairs, because it triggers 2 points. It triggers community and a nice living or working environment because there's somewhere to go. So they want a cafe in there because it helps sell flats or offices. So it's kind of being aware where you go to put that cafe in and the message. So I think in Germany or France, wherever this is changing, you can be tough enough in your negotiations because they want a cafe in there. And I think that's the shifting point to be able to grow a marketplace. Speechless. Look at that. Oh wow, that tumbleweed was heavy.
Agnes, have you got something for that?
Yeah, I guess it used to be really cheap to open a cafe in London, and now it's very expensive. I've just done it a couple of years ago, blew our budget, didn't make any money for the first 2 years. So it is really tough. I guess as a coffee roaster, we try to support our wholesale customers if they get in touch with us earlier than 2 weeks before they open, and we act in an advisory role. So we look at their business plans with them, we look at their sites, we visit, we talk to them about negotiating with landlords. I think that's a really big one, getting that right. And we also help them out with machinery, which is huge for us, and we can't do it for every customer, obviously, but when we can, we do load machinery, which is a huge cost, obviously, when you're opening something.
I mean, it's interesting. There's some education for us to do there, Philip, I think. I think the amount of customers that we come in and have done just that. They spend 30,000 euros on their tiles, 100,000 euros on their bathroom fit out. 2 weeks before opening, I need a La Marzocco. My first question is, which roastery are you using? Standard answer, no, keine Ahnung. So I think there's some work for us to do, somehow together, to change that mindset, to make them understand that their 30,000 euros worth of bathroom tiles is not going to bring them any revenue. It's a challenge for us, I think, here.
Well, I have a question about actually, like, when I see also your program and what we are talking about, it's like, which I am really amazed about, the sustainability, which is on the green coffee to roasters, and which is not perfect yet. It will never ever be perfect, but it is already in process. So when we are talking about specialty coffee, is usually actually like what I perceive at least as a coffee professional, like from the green coffee to roaster, and that's exactly when it stops. And then the barista is like, okay, here 10 euros for you per hour. Oh, there is no work, go home. Can you come tomorrow? There is one sick, and can you work just 2 weeks without day off? So actually, I'm more interested about the sustainability on the, in my inner circle, because it is always like when I see many coffee roasters, we are sustainable, we pay more and this and that. Story is fantastic, but what do you pay your barista? He gets the minimum wage, and that's actually the biggest struggle. And amazing work from the farmers, amazing also work of like trying to do something sustainable in the green coffee trade. We are trying, we are not there yet. So that's just for information, not that so much as like, are we enough? No, we are not enough. But also it is important to start maybe from your inner circle also a little bit, to pay the baristas or to educate the baristas, and not to say, hey, you have a La Marzocco, so your coffee gonna be amazing. It's like selling, hey, here is your Lamborghini. Do you have a driving license or can you drive? That's also important. And it's also important to give a vision to the barista, say, here you can be, that's your career, you can grow to that side. So the worst thing is actually what we have at that moment in Berlin, or usually like generally in Europe, is like for baristas, we don't have any perspective for career. So you're 30 years old, okay, you can still do 35, okay, with 40. Yeah, story, I have a Yankee here for 10 euros who wants to work because he can get social. So I guess that's also a part just to wake up for us and to have at least a living wage like in UK, as far as I heard that there is something. And specialty coffee is transforming the specialty coffee also to the consumer with the right water, with the right equipment, with the right education, with the nice and amazing hospitality. So I guess it's also important for us to wake up and to say like, hey guys, okay, wait, the barista is the one who represents all the people in the chain. And what do you do, for example? How do you, what is your challenge in UK? And how do you get really not just like, oh, we work with these organizations, but we really need the professionals. It's not, we don't go to, oh, my, whatever, my knee is hurting, hey, can you just, doesn't work like that. So.
I think, firstly, I think you're all in a room, and I would say you all probably suffer the same issue. So I think one of the things in the UK is there is a community of roasters, there is a community of baristas, there is a coffee community, and they talk to each other. And I think it's important that the power of change comes with a group of people that want change. So I think, if you get anything out of today, maybe it's, talking amongst yourselves of what should change in the marketplace. I think, it's as a roaster and you want people, the barista to be interested in their career, it's really about the roaster telling those coffee shops and doing workshops within your own partners to tell them that there is a career in coffee. I think it's how much people put into it and invest in that knowledge and knowledge sharing and inspiration and a journey for people is really important. But maybe you start talking day one today, you work out a way of having these discussions. There is, Raz says there is a way of doing feedback from this event, and maybe you put in that, you'd like to have a forum where you can discuss these challenges about barista salaries or lack of training or, whatever it is, but maybe you take that point and you drive it.
That's why I'm here, and that's why I just wanted to call out. I say wake up, it's also that part, not only that part, and start from inner circle, also, because we want more, you want more La Marzocco users here in Europe or in Germany, and we need to translate also the specialty coffee, as I said, into the cup. So the last person who gonna mess it up at 90 plus, or he gonna make a fine commercial coffee also to a drinkable beverage. So that's actually maybe was just a wake-up call for.
Well, that barista has the biggest responsibility about sustainability in the industry, because they're the people that interact with that end user and give them the knowledge and the understanding about how fragile this industry is. So I think they should invest in this and be more educated in terms of the whole process of coffee.
How are we doing for time, Mr. Matthias? We're over?
Yeah, we're over.
Okay. Any other questions? We're going to be here in the back or in the front or wherever we're going to be. Thank you so much, two lovely people, for coming across. Amazing. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for coming. Good chat.
Thanks for listening to this episode of StartCast.